On today's episode of the show, continuing the player rankings for the Louisville Cardinals, numbers 12 through 10, identifying an upgrade at the tight end position, a playmaker with an impressive resume, and one of the most versatile defenders on this Cardinals football team. Coming up on today's episode of Locked On Louisville.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what is going on, everyone? It is Friday. Vibes are immaculate. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the summer starts winding down, the sports have stopped sporting like we want them to. But for the remainder of the summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day. All summer long, visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, I want to personally thank you all for making this your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. We're into the second episode of the 5-part series that is ranking the top 15 players for the Louisville Cardinals ahead of the 2024 college football season. We begin with an upgrade at the tight end position. We then transition into talking about a playmaker with an impressive resume, and then we conclude by identifying who, truthfully, the most versatile defender on the team is. Numbers 12 through 10, if you don't remember, number 15 was Pete Nigra. Number 14 was Chris Bell. Number 13, Corey Thornton. So you had two offensive players and a defensive player. That's going to be the same thing or the same case for this show. Let's go ahead and get right into it. Number 12, an upgrade at the tight end position. That is San Diego State transfer Mark Redman. The tight end position last year for Louisville was arguably, well, depending on who you talk to, without a doubt, the worst position group for the Louisville Cardinals. The fact that Louisville was able to get production out of the group that included Joey Gatewood, Nate Kariski, the list goes on. The Cardinals really lacked at the position via talent overall and depth. Nonetheless, this group needed a huge remodel in the offseason. And it started with the addition of San Diego State transfer Mark Redman. Now, it took a while for Redman to get to campus for whatever reason, whether it was credits or graduating from SDSU. I'm not sure what the situation was, but nonetheless, he made it to campus at the end of the spring and has been with the program ever since. And he was one of the first priority targets of the portal. And for good reason. Redman was a two-time All Mountain West Conference second-team selection in both of his 2 seasons at San Diego State. He spent his first year at Washington, didn't really play much at all, transferred over to the Aztecs program, and the Newport Beach, California native was able to carve out a very significant role. Significant enough to where he led the team in all 3 receiving categories: catches, yards, and receiving touchdowns. He had a career year in 2023, career high 38 catches, 408 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He averaged about 11 yards per catch. 6'5", 255 pounds. Not only is going to be factoring into the passing game, but he is a very serviceable run defender. Being 6'5", 255, moves really well for his size and is just a mismatch from that spot. He lands on this list because if you remember, it's not so much the position importance or the value of the position in which a player is in. It's the overall talent as it relates to the position. It is how productive a player is going to be and the impact that player is going to have on the unit and the team as a whole. Redman, depending on who you ask, I think, personally for me, I think he's a top 5 tight end in the ACC. There's some really good tight ends in the conference. Some will have him outside of the top 5. I have yet to see a list that has him outside of the top 10. Redman is a really, really good player. The only reason he's not higher up on this list for me is because I'm not necessarily so sure what the snap deviation is going to look like, because you have some other guys in that room that are going to compete for snaps. Nate Kariski had his best, or was playing his best ball at the end of last season. Jamari Johnson is a rising sophomore that a lot of people have a ton of high hopes for. You have some other transfers: Isaiah Cummings from Kentucky, Jaleel Skinner from Miami. Skinner's more of an H-back, a receiving H-back, a tall receiver, if you will. And Cummings is more of a traditional tight end than he is a Marshawn Ford type player. But nonetheless, I think both of these guys are going to be in line for some solid snaps, especially Skinner. I am encouraged by what we've heard this offseason, and I think that the sky is the limit for the guy. A very highly rated guy coming out of high school. Really just wasn't able to put it together this past year in Coral Gables, but the talent is still there. So that's why he's not that. That's why Redman isn't higher up on this list for me, is just because of the mouths that there are to feed in that room. Yes, tight end is a position that when you look at a Jeff Brom-led offense, one characteristic of a great Jeff Brom offense is the tight end position. There is a ton of focus and emphasis on that position, both in the blocking game and as a pass catcher. And I think that Redman knocks out two birds with one stone. He is a clear upgrade over what they had last season. No disrespect to any of those guys. But he is. Redman, there's a reason why he has been he's been on the Mackey Award watch list the past 2 years. The award given to the nation's top tight end. It's pretty clear as to why he's been on those lists the past 2 years. That's because he's a really, really good player. Really good tight end. What the production looks like, I'm not sure. I think that he's going to be the pass catcher or the leading tight end when it comes to receiving yards. He's going to play the majority of the snaps, right? But he's on this list because he's going to lead the tight ends in receiving. I could see where he becomes Tyler Shoug's security blanket, because we see that with the tight end position. You know, in third down situations, you look for 1 to 2 guys in particular, and one of those guys may very well end up being Mark Redman. I think that the national media has hyped up this edition, and rightfully so, but it doesn't tell the full tale of how good Louisville's offense was last year, and they virtually got no production from the position. Like I think Gatewood had the most receiving yards, and he had like 165 or something. Not much at all, and it was more towards the end of the season. Kariski had some solid games as well, but overall, tight end was a struggling point for the Cardinals. That's not going to be the case this year. It's going to be one of the larger strengths, especially on that offensive side. Is he going to be an all-ACC caliber player? I think that there's a possibility. I think his level of production likely won't match just how good he is, how talented he is, and how huge of an impact he plays on this team. That's the main thing here, is that it's always so difficult to predict statistics, because especially when you basically bring in a whole new team on offense, new quarterback, new receivers, a couple new running backs, new tight ends, half of a new offensive line. You really don't know what to expect. You know, Louisville's probably going to throw the ball a little bit more than what you're used to seeing in a Jeff Brom offense, especially at Louisville last year, but I think that's more of an outlier. But Redman's on this list for 3 reasons. Number one, he is one of the more talented players at his position across the whole team. So that's number one. Number two is the production. He is going to lead tight ends in receiving. He is going to be a security blanket for Tyler Shough, and I think he is going to have some big-time performances. It would not surprise me to see a couple of 100-yard performances for Mark Redman. And then number 3 is the overall impact. Not only does he have a huge impact on the passing game, but blocking for the run as well, and being able to seal the edge and help his team in that regard. He's going to take a lot of pressure off of the other wide receivers, because you have to you have to put a lot of attention into guarding a tight end when they've shown that they can be very serviceable. So number 12 on this list is Mark Redman for the three reasons that I just identified. I went sort of back and forth. As I mentioned, these rankings are they're so fluid. Like, I'll be honest, the first top 15 list that I had, I changed up, and then I changed it up again, and then one more time. Redman was a little bit higher on the list for me, I'll admit, but it's not an indication of his talent as why he dropped a little bit. It's more so the thoughts and the praise that I have for these next two guys. This next player is a sleeping giant. He's ready to wake back up. He's a playmaker with an impressive resume, and he's getting overlooked way too much. We'll tell you who that is here coming up on the next segment of Locked on Louisville. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by FanDuel. I love sports. I love them so much, I never want them to stop. But as the summer winds down, we get fewer games up until the end of this month. The sports have stopped sporting like I want them to, but FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. If you go to FanDuel.com, you can see the daily boosts and bonuses, especially in the MLB realm, that have won me a decent amount of money this summer, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without FanDuel. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Also, before the next segment, I do want to take this time to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. If you don't know what Home Field is, you're pretty much behind the game. It is a premium collegiate apparel brand based in Indianapolis. They have a focus on creating incredibly comfortable, officially licensed apparel with vintage college designs. They are licensed with the University of Louisville, and there's a wide range of available colleges, including your Louisville Cardinals. Right now, they have the Can't Miss Kickoff 2024. That's a month-long campaign delivering everything needed for the upcoming football season. So football boxes that include coaches' jackets, bomber jackets, championship week attires, and adding 5 new schools to the home field roster. The highlight of the campaign are the football boxes. You need to check those out because, I mean, they're curated so fans can have new gear to wear all season long, suitable for all weather conditions. They contain 3 never-before-seen items for your school that are not available anywhere else. I have a Cards baseball t-shirt that I literally cannot find online. People have asked me, where'd you get it? homefieldapparel.com. That's where you need to check out the wide selection of all the colleges available, not just the University of Louisville. It's convenient for online shopping, allowing fans to browse through various designs and find the perfect college gear. Home Field is where you need to go. That's homefieldapparel.com to find all Louisville Cardinals apparel. Louisville fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On College Football Podcast. Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron with discussion on the upcoming season and the ever-changing landscape of college athletics, including conference realignment, the transfer portal, NIL, new college football expanded playoffs, and more. Locked On College Football is available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Into the second segment of this second episode of the 5-part series ranking the top 15 players for the Louisville Cardinals ahead of this football season. Number 11, a playmaker with an impressive resume. People aren't talking about him enough. That is Alabama transfer Ja'Cory Brooks. Brooks comes to this team as pound for pound one of the most talented players on the squad, regardless of position. He is a former 5-star prospect coming out of high school, decided to go to Alabama, as a lot of 5-stars do. Immediately, 15 for 192 and 2 touchdowns. He was primed. Now, freshmen don't always play right away at Alabama. It's a develop and reload type situation. But 2022, as a sophomore, led the team in receiving touchdowns. He had 8 of them, averaged 17.3 yards per reception, career high 39 catches, and 674 receiving yards with Bryce Young under center for the Crimson Tide. There's a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. He was the most impressive one to me. I've watched a ton of Alabama football over the years, and Brooks was fantastic. You look at the go-ahead game-winning catch he had against Auburn that found the end zone. The huge matchup win that he had over Julius Brents at Kansas State in the bowl game. He consistently looked really good against top defensive backs, not only in the SEC, but the country as a whole. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. That was 2023. 3 catches, 30 yards, no touchdowns, career low 10 yards per reception. What you need to know is that he spent the majority of the season injured. He had a shoulder injury that he was nursing all season long. I found it interesting because now former head coach Nick Saban said in an interview back in early November that basically he's been battling this injury all season, but he has yet to let it affect his attitude or his willingness to help the team. So while he was injured, he still helped the team via special teams. And that is something that right there, I think that that's fantastic to show that, that team first mentality. And Saban, basically paraphrasing here, said that the reason he's not playing a ton is because he's pretty much injured, right? So the thing for me right now is that injury fully healed? Now, he missed some time in the spring, but all signs point to him being 100% or close to 100% at this point in time. When he's on the field, now I understand you do not have to tell me because it's one of the top 5 sayings that I repeat on this show. The best ability is availability. If you cannot stay healthy and you can't stay on the field, I don't care if you land on this list. You're not a player on this list if you can't stay healthy. This is all, the prerequisite to being on this list is good health. And that applies for other players on this list as well. But when he's healthy, he's one of the most talented players on this team. And if it wasn't for Colin Lacey, he's a bona fide wide receiver 1 on this squad. And who knows, truthfully, he still could end up being the wide receiver 1 on the team. Like, it would not surprise me whatsoever. When you get 700 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns for Alabama in the SEC, you're playing really well. Now, some will say, well, you have Bryce Young throwing it to him. Go back, and now it's hard to do this because not everybody has time or the interest to go back and actually watch Alabama. I watched a ton of Crimson Tide back then. I still do. I was always impressed by Brooks's ability to create the separation in the ways that he did, being 6'3", 195 pounds. He's extremely agile, and he's quicker than you think. He lands at number 11 on this list because he's uber talented. He's going to have a good season for the Cardinals. If he stays healthy, he's going to be relied upon by Tyler Shough. Outside of that, the impact that he's going to have is it's going to, take a lot of the pressure off Colin Lacey, Chris Bell, the other playmakers, Tyler Shough. One of the issues last year that Louisville had, Jack Plummer wasn't the greatest quarterback. But let's call it how it is. Louisville's wide receiving core had an explosion problem. Couldn't really create much separation. So when Jamari Thrash got hurt, man, you saw the vulnerability. That's not going to be the case this season. We talked about Chris Bell and how I think he's going to have a really solid season. I think the same is going to be said about Corey Brooks. This is a bounce back year for him. Going to be fantastic. The thing for me, and the reason why he's only number 11, and he's not higher up on this list. So if he's one of the most talented players, why is he at number 11? The reason for that is the same reason Chris Bell is at number 14. Because, spoiler alert, Colin Lacey is on this list as well. So 3 top 15 players on your team are receivers. There's only so much of the football to throw around. Now, I understand that if you're 2019 LSU and you have Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Terrace Marshall, you can make it work. that LSU offense was the best college football offense of all time. I'm not going to compare any other offense to that one at this moment. They're going to throw the ball a lot more than you saw last season, so that some of the targets are going to be there. But from a production standpoint, it holds them back a little bit just because of the amount of players that are right here on this particular list. So that's the only thing keeping him at number 11 for me, is because you have two other wide receivers on this list. I'll be honest, though, one guy, this next player that I'm about to identify, the most versatile defender on the team, or one of the most versatile defenders on the team, I went back and forth on where to put this guy. At first, I'll be honest, I started out and I totally forgot about him. And then in the next one, I put him at number 8. And then I sort of compromised and put him at number 10, because if he's not in your top 15, you need to redo your list. We'll identify who that is here in the final segment of today's episode of Locked on Louisville. Today's episode of the show also brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which I just got tickets to the Reds-Astros game for Labor Day. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, but I like to plan ahead, and there's nothing wrong with that. But however, I've been more inclined to wait for the last-minute deals because of the opportunities at Gametime. At the very least, go check it out. Check out the app, because I promise you'll be swayed to only use Gametime moving forward. When you see the views from the seat, the panoramic view from the seat that you would have, the all-in pricing, so there's no surprise fees at checkout, and then the Gametime's 110% lowest price guarantee. So what that means is that if you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And into the final segment of this second episode of the 5-part series, ranking the top 15 Louisville football players ahead of the 2024 college football season. Number 12, Mark Redman. Number 11, Ja'Cory Brooks. We go to the defensive side, one of the most versatile defenders on the team. Number 10 is Ben Perry. Perry is returning for his 4th season with the Cardinals program. Was a member of that 2021 class, had a couple tackles that year, had a breakout season in Satterfield's last year, 43 tackles with 3 pass deflections, ultimately entered the portal. Thankfully, he rescinded his name from the portal and stayed with Jeff Brom, and he took another step forward. 56 total tackles, that's career high, 4 pass deflections. He got his first sack, still looking for that first interception, but the 6'3" native of Chicago, Illinois, was one of the most versatile defenders on the team last year, and he will, by default, be one of the most versatile defenders on the team this season. All reports early reports out of fall camp is that he's winning a ton of one-on-one battles in coverage. He's making plays and looking extremely solid. He's gotten better each season to the point now in his 4th year with the Louisville Cardinals. He's got that veteran experience. He's got that continuity within this Jeff Brom, Ron English / Mark Hagan defense. And it's his 4th year playing ACC football. Once again, I will remind you that you can't discredit another full offseason in the college program, especially when you have the continuity within a certain defensive scheme. Ben Perry, in my opinion, will take the next step forward in 2024. He was recruited, don't forget, he was recruited as a safety coming out of high school, played a ton of safety, and then one trend that became noticeable is that Louisville transitioned a lot of their safeties into linebackers. TJ Quinn, for example. Jalen Alderman also fitting that mold. And then Ben Perry was in that same mold, but he plays that card position, which is that outside linebacker spot that you remember Rajay Burns playing and some other guys. oh, what's his name from last season? It's driving me nuts. Gilbert Frierson played here and there. Ben Perry will lead that spot, backed up by guys like Antonio Watts and maybe even Taz Nicholson and Tamarian McDonald at times. But that is Ben Perry's spot to lose. One of the few penciled-in starters this season will come at that card spot with Ben Perry. The talent is there. The talent's always been there. It's more so just getting into that new position and learning it like the back of your hand and getting it to where it's comfortable. And then after a really good 2022, you bring in a whole new base defensive formation and package to where you got to learn a little bit of a different role. And he did, and he still had his best season to date. So he's more comfortable in that system. He's making plays, and this is another year in the system or in the college football landscape. So I expect Ben Perry, obviously, to be one of the most talented players on the team, one of the most versatile defenders. The production is going to be there. I think he's probably going to rank top 3, top 5 at the very worst in total tackles. I'm going to go out on a limb, and I think he's going to get 2 interceptions this season. I think he's going to be utilized more in coverage, especially since you have a ton of really good defensive backs coming in via the transfer portal. Quincy Riley coming back, MJ Griffin back as well. So I'm intrigued. It was really challenging to decide on where to put Perry because there's no doubt the talent, there's no doubt the versatility, there's no doubt the veteran leadership and experience. It's just more so of what's the role going to continue to look like. And I realized after my mistake of my first initial list, Perry has to be on this list. I want to hear, where do you think Ben Perry ranks in the grand scheme of the top 15? Is he more so, is he a top 5 player? You think, yeah, this guy is a lot better than you're leading us to believe, Dalton, or is he 6 through 10? You're like, yeah, I see what you're saying. Or maybe you're a person that says, I'm not as high on Perry as you might be. He's more in 11 to 15. Or he might not even be in the 15 for you. I'm really interested to hear what you have to say on where Ben Perry lands on your list. But number 12, Mark Redman. Number 11, Ja'Cory Brooks. Number 10, Ben Perry. We continue through the top 10 on next week's episodes of the show. There might be, keyword might, on Monday be a basketball recruiting episode because, stop me if you've heard this before, more prospects have included Louisville in their list cuts. So we might have a basketball recruiting episode on Monday, but the plan at this point in time with 3 player ranking episodes to go, the goal is to finish this series by next Friday. So I don't want to, completely break up the series, but just a heads up there. That is going to wrap up this Friday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. We'll see you right back here